Welcome into episode 506 of the Skate Podcast. I am Brian DeFelice, joined by Bridget Prue, Scott McLaughlin, and we recently had a mailbag episode where many questions were featured regarding Providence. So we did say on that episode, we need to get one of our Providence friends on to accurately answer those questions, and that's exactly what we've done today. So Mark Divver has also joined us. Mark, thank you for being here.
Happy to be here.
Now, Mark is also going to join our regularly scheduled programming, and he is going to bless us with an opening shift of his own to start the episode off.
Well, I spent a lot more time or brain power watching the Providence game last night. I kind of had the Boston game on in the background, and the Providence game didn't go a whole lot better than the Boston game. You know, they went in 8-0 on the road, and they lost to Laval 4-1. It was a competitive game, but not. Providence has been on the road for a week. They look tired a little bit, and the game didn't go that well.
And they're missing a lot of their players because they're involved.
They're missing a lot of players. Yeah, top players. So, they've been able to overcome that recently, but last night Laval's a good team, better than the teams they've played recently. So they lost, but they're off to an amazing start, 16-4. I mean, that's I haven't seen a start like that in Providence, and it's not going to last forever, obviously. But last night's game was a little bit of a step back or a step down, but that's going to happen. It's a long season.
Yeah, Mark, are you ready to suit up on the third D pair for Providence?
Yeah.
I think I can give them a couple of shifts. I got to keep it short, though. I got to keep it short. My wind isn't where it needs to be.
He's out there for 20 seconds. He doesn't even get it. He just goes back right back to the bench.
We will get into that more, because for anyone who maybe didn't watch the Bruins game last night, they suffered another injury on defense with Mike Callahan going down. So they are probably going to be calling someone else up ahead of Thursday's game.
Yeah, I mean, when are we going to see the Frederic Brunet call up? I want to definitely talk about that with you, Mark, because he's somebody we've been wondering if he was going to get a call up on defense. And now that the injuries are still continuing to stack up, maybe do we see him? We want to ask you how he's been doing this year. But first, we'll finish our opening shifts. And Brian, I think you were going to go second.
Well, the other game that was happening last night was the Bruins in Detroit, and it was the second half of a home and home with them. They lose 5-4. It didn't feel that close throughout most of the game. Obviously, getting a 3-0 hole is not going to do wonders for them. They also got into a 4-0 hole against the Rangers the day after Thanksgiving. So it's kind of a bit of a trend here lately, whether if they're getting behind the 8 ball. I actually think if we go back even weeks, they've been giving up the first goal a lot in the last stretch of games. But long story short, yes, the Bruins have a lot of injuries, but last night to me is a good microcosm of the troubles this team faces when they don't win the special teams battle like they've been doing most of the year, despite taking so many penalties, and when they don't get the goaltending that they've been getting most of this year. Jeremy Swayman has been fantastic all year. Last night was not one of those games. The team around him wasn't very good either, but I just don't think it's a coincidence that you don't take advantage of, let's call it your only power play throughout the majority of regulation. Detroit gets their first power play later on in the game. They score. Like I said, Swayman wasn't great. It ended up in a game where Boston just never really had much of a chance after making it 3-2. Again, that's when the bad goaltending kind of came into play. But Detroit's a winnable game. It's a winnable game, and it was frustrating last night that the Bruins weren't able to capitalize, especially when they got it back to within 3-2. And we've said this many times as well. The Bruins, if they don't have their game, they're a winnable game for opponents. So again, you lose a special teams and goaltending battle, which has been the bread and butter for this team most of the year. This is what happens.
Bridget, I think you're muted.
I'm not muted, but I don't know why this keeps happening with me, but can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. My opening shift has to do with something else that was going wrong for the Bruins against Detroit, and it was the Lindholm Peak pair. I know, Scott, you had the analytics. You texted us last night that it hasn't been good for a little bit now, and I think it was just did not pass the eye test yesterday. It seemed like every time something went wrong defensively, that was the line that was out there, and Andrew Peak was out on the ice for all 5 goals against. He was out there. He was a -4 because one of those came on the penalty kill, but it was rough. He got caught deep. I think on the first goal, or maybe it was the second goal, he got caught deep. Guy gets behind him, scores. It just seemed like that pair was out of sync with each other, with the rest of the team, with where they needed to be in coverage. And it was just it was a tough game for them for sure. And that should be a pair that, I mean, theoretically, that's if when those guys are healthy, that should be a good pair. But it just wasn't last night. And obviously we're going to get into the injuries on throughout the team, but on defense and what the combos could be, I guess, if you wanted to go away from that pair. But those are 2 guys that should be able to hold down the fort while you wait to get Charlie McAvoy back. And we talked about Yoki Haryu's on IR now too. And then Callahan gets hurt less than 3 minutes into the game. So yeah, that's a pair that has to do better.
Yeah, I mean, the Bruins have been relying on Zadorov, Lindholm, Peak as like their 3 veteran go-to guys. And honestly, and like, I don't even mean this as picking on Andrew Peak. That's too much to ask of him if we're being realistic. Like, Andrew Peak is a good 5th, 6th defenseman, can be your 4th guy, you know, if you need him to. Asking him to be like a 23-minute a night guy and your number 3 guy on the back end is it's too much, but that's where they are with McAvoy out. So I kind of felt like maybe a game like this was coming, where it was going to crack a little, and you were going to kind of realize like, oh yeah, they're really asking some guys to play over their skis on the back end right now. And yeah, last night was a night it caught up, as Brian said. Swayman, you know, had his first off game in over a month. Really, I thought he was terrific. Basically every single start he had in November. So we can touch on a couple other game thoughts. But my opening shift is about one of the injured Bruins, and along with McAvoy, the most significant, that's David Pastrnak, who missed his 3rd straight game Tuesday. And it now sounds like this is more of a week-to-week situation than day-to-day, because Marco Sturm said he's probably not going to skate the rest of this week. So that would rule him out for Thursday's game. It would seemingly rule him out for Saturday's game. Sturm said he does feel like Pastrnak needs to get back on the ice and like get into a practice before he plays in a game. So if you're not skating the rest of this week, like, when is that practice going to be? Early next week? And then you hope he returns next week. So this is dragging on a little bit and seems to be, you know, a little worse than the initial day-to-day designation that Sturm put on it. And obviously, look, you don't want Pastrnak coming back at 75% and risking re-injury. I get it, but it does put this team in a tough situation with both him and McAvoy out. It's like you kind of feel like whatever wins they get during this stretch are almost a bonus, but they need to find ways to get them, because you can just slide down the standings too quickly with the way the Eastern Conference is right now.
Yeah, it's a very tight conference, and I mentioned online recently, and Scott, you quote tweeted it with your own idea to be a solve, but heading into yesterday's action, there's only one team in the Eastern Conference that was below 500. So we can talk about why that is. It's a product of, you know, the loser point, and just it's probably more so this year than it has been in years past, but it's a very tight conference. So if you win a couple of games, you're gaining separation. You lose a couple and you're going down. I guess the good news is you're never that far out of it until you really go on a big slide. But I mean, no McAvoy, no Pastrnak. I mean, what can we expect of them in that situation? I mean, or any team that goes down their top defenseman, top forward. It's difficult, as we know. So It might get worse before it gets better, but hopefully the Bruins can find a way to muck their way to some wins here, and maybe there's some maneuvering between the players that are available that they can do. I mean, how impactful has Elias Lindholm been? Obviously, you're paying him to be where he's supposed to be. Don't think he's played poor enough to be demoted from any line, really. But I'm watching last night, and I feel like a guy like Murat Husnudinov, who we talk about, he seems like a player that he kind of gets lost in the shuffle when he goes down to play with Sean Corrali and Michael Eastimont. Like, is there a way to get him more minutes with better players? But then it's like, well, who's he replacing, right? Because Alex Steeves is playing great hockey. Victor Arvidsson was playing great hockey before he got hurt. Obviously, he was a step behind last night. So I get it, but I wonder what the right buttons to push are going to be while they have guys out right now.
Yeah, and they have a lot of guys out, and like Scott said, if you're missing Pasternak and McAvoy, you're already behind the 8 ball, but then you're missing the supporting cast at different times as well. Obviously, Middlestad's back, and Arvidsson just came back, but wasn't fully up to speed, it seemed. And you're missing now some guys that you called up that already got injured, like Matej Blumel, who I don't know, Mark, if you saw much of his time in Boston, but he didn't quite seem like he was fully at the NHL speed. I don't know if you had thoughts on him and what he was doing in Providence before he got called up, and what he did when he was in Boston before he got injured.
Well, I think that he's obviously a shooter, a shoot-first guy. He's constantly working on that and doing it in games, shooting without even hesitating. That has worked pretty well for him in the American League. I don't know that that's a recipe for success for him in the NHL. Probably not. But the mistakes he started creeping into his game, their decisions with the puck, turnovers, and Marco Sturm hasn't shown any patience for that kind of stuff. And even I wouldn't question Blumel's effort, but certainly Marco questioned Johnny Beecher's effort, and he's out of here now. So I think what I take from that is that Sturm is not going to futz around. If guys he sees flaws in their game, they're either going to correct those flaws or they're going to be someplace else, whether that's Providence or, in Beecher's case, Calgary.
Yeah.
So, I don't know that Blumel, if he comes back healthy, what is his path back into the lineup? Is it just because there's so many guys hurt, they got to put him in, or is it something else? I don't know. I'd say, his future in Boston is very much in doubt, I would say, once some of these other guys get healthy.
Do you think that's why Alex Steeves has run with the job? Because his effort has been there, and he seems to not be making those kind of mistakes with decision making and being behind the play. Is effort part of Alex Steeves' game that you've seen covering the AHL that's made him be more of a fit in Boston?
Yeah. I think that's come out in Boston. He finishes checks. He's physical. When the hit is there, he takes it. Blumel's not a physical player at all. That's just asking him to be that guy is you're miscasting him. But Steeves has shown that he can be physical, and he's taking advantage of your opportunities will take you a long way. There's, guys in the past who have had chances and haven't been able to score, and pretty soon they're back in the American League. Steeves, at least recently, has shown that when he gets a chance, he'll put the puck in the net. So that's aside from the physical play and all of that, that's he's given the Bruins exactly, I think, what they hoped they were going to get from him.
Yeah, I think we've seen a couple instances recently of guys struggling with that jump up to NHL speed. And obviously we just covered Blumel. I think you saw that with some of the turnovers where you just get closed on so much quicker in the NHL. You don't have the time and space you do in the AHL. And I thought another player who ran into that was Georgii Merkulov. The one game he got called up. Now, that's an admittedly tough situation where he flies back from Toronto on Thanksgiving, doesn't have a practice, doesn't have a morning skate, just gets thrown right in because Pasternak and Zacha were both injured. But he had a couple plays in the first period of that game where you could tell he just thought he had more time and space than he did. You know, coming over the line, trying to pull up, make a play, and all of a sudden the defenseman's on him. I think he also, kind of similar to Blumel, he had like a soft flip on one play. That's not getting past an NHL defenseman. So I do want to ask you, Mark, about that situation, because it was kind of curious that it was Merkulov who got the call because they needed a right wing, and they play Merkulov on his off wing. I know he's been a full-time wing this season, but on the left. And I think I and a lot of other people look at that and go, well, Fabian Lysell is a natural right winger. I know he kind of just came back from injury, but has been putting up some points. What did you make of why that was Merkulov who got what ended up only being one game, but the chance there?
Well, I just think that Merkulov's been a more dependable all-around player in the AHL than Lysell's been. You know, he had the game last Wednesday when Lysell scored that highlight reel goal. Well, he was like the third or fourth best forward for Providence that night, despite that goal. Merkulov was the best forward. Patrick Brown was good. Locmelis was good. You know, I just think Merk, you know, had a strong game and has had a strong start to the season, although, you know, maybe the numbers don't think he's close to a point a game. But I just think, you know, dependability wise, he was the pick. You know, with Fabian, I mean, those turnovers, those plays that Blumel, that kind of got him, the fans up in arms against him, those are routine things that Lysell does. Turns the puck over, makes poor decisions with it. So, you know, at least for that one little window there, I think Merk was the dependable choice. You know, it didn't last long, and I mean, you can say, well, that's not really a fair chance, but I mean, they're in the business of trying to win games in Boston. They're not in the business of giving guys a fair chance to prove that they should stay in the NHL. So it was a kind of a tough break for Merk, but hey, that's life in when you're, you know, on the bubble between AHL and NHL.
So you think it wasn't related to injury that Lysell didn't find himself in that position?
I kind of don't think it was. No, I just think Merk was a more dependable player, has been a more dependable player.
So
Now,
okay, go ahead. Sorry.
Fabian's had a good stretch here. You know, I think that when you produce the way he has recently, you can overlook the flaws in his game, which are still there, have been there all along, and will probably continue to be there. I just think that's who he is as a player. But when you put up points and you score highlight reel goals, then you don't notice or you don't harp on the shortcomings as much. But, you know, some of the things that he does, I don't know how much patience, you know, Marco Sturm would have for some of that stuff. You know, I think we'll find out at some point, because I don't think they're gonna bury him down in Providence the whole year. I think if he continues to put up some points, I think he'll get an opportunity. But you know, maybe this just wasn't the right time. But that injury, that wasn't a big deal injury. He came out for practice a couple of times, and then like pulled the chute after 5 minutes. It wasn't. I have an idea what it was. I'm not gonna say what it was, but it wasn't like some big time injury that was really worth worrying about. It was a minor thing.
I guess to follow up too on something you just said, his flaws have been there, and they've been there from the beginning and seem like they're going to continue to be there. What do you think the biggest things holding him back from, because it doesn't sound like it's just an NHL thing, like things you need to improve to make the NHL. Like it sounds like he's, when he has these flaws, they hurt him at the AHL level as well. What would you say are his biggest issues that he needs to overcome?
He needs to make better decisions sometimes with the puck. There was the game on Sunday in Belleville. He scored a goal. He set up a goal, and he's having a good game. He's having a real good game, building on what he had done in the previous couple of games. And he's at the blue line, and instead of pushing the puck up the wall or just throwing it into the zone, he tried to make a play, and it was picked off, and Belleville went down on a 2-on-1 and scored. So, I mean, decisions like that over and over. Here he is in year 4, right? Year 4. Decisions like that, you got to get that stuff out of your game if you want to be a full-time NHL player. And he hasn't shown stuff like that. Still crops up, and that's it's discouraging that that's the case. There was one last night, not to harp on, he had a pretty good game last night, but the 1-on-4 zone entry, it's not going to work. It's not going to work. And he tries it less than he did the first couple of years, but it's still in there sometimes. And you see David Pastrnak do that too. It's not like he's the only. Fabian's not the only one who makes a mistake, who makes a bad decision. But I think it's things like that are holding him back to the point where, what have they recalled? 4 forwards so far, and he hasn't been one of them. So I would point to the stuff like that. That's the reason why he's not the first guy up, or the second guy, or the third guy at this point.
And you can point to me a guy on the Boston Bruins roster right now at forward, and I'll tell you every single one of them is prone to turnovers. But the difference is, and Mark, and this is what you're kind of getting to, is that there's a frequency to things, there's levels to things, and an overall maturity to one's game that, yes, while guys can make mistakes at the NHL level, more often than not, there's a maturity and to their game and their hockey IQ. And you mentioned Lysell trying to go 1-on-4 recently. I don't know if that highlight reel goal helped him from stopping trying to do those things, but it seems though you made commentary online, Mark, that you mentioned it earlier in this episode too. His game has been improving, right? So at some point, he's never going to be that defensively reliable guy. You're going to have to at least at some point see what they have. Otherwise, everybody's just spinning their wheels here. I mean, I feel like that's kind of the case with Merkulov, right? I feel like I just don't know if he has the foot speed, the size and foot speed combination to make plays efficiently as he does at the AHL level, at the NHL level. But Lysell has that foot speed, but I don't know if he has the quick mentality just yet, or the proper mentality. But then there's other players too, Mark, that should have that, like a Matt Poitras. That what's Matty P done down in Providence this year? People are clamoring for him, but he hasn't had the greatest of years. What can you tell us about some of the other forwards down in Providence? Matt Poitras, Dan Locmelis, some other players that people have been higher on, certainly during training camp and in years past.
Well, Poitras, has had kind of an up and down, start to the season. He's had good games. He's had games where you don't notice him that much. He hasn't had a lot of puck luck, in the offensive zone. And, people will say, well, you got to work for that. You got to work your way out of it. And that's true, but he's had some tough breaks, with the puck. although recently, he's found himself with the puck on his stick and a good chance, and he's buried it. But you can see the frustration in him about the fact that the points aren't really coming the way you'd like to hope they would. But he's playing hard, and I think there's a lot to be said for trying to play your way through it. I think that's what he's trying to do. To get back to Fabian for a minute, in the past, not this year, but in the past, he's had dry spells where his effort just fell off and his compete just fell off. So that's a red flag, obviously. But with Matt Poitras, I don't see that. He's playing his ass off, and it's not really working that well for him, but he's continuing to play hard. So I think that's a positive. In a lot of ways, the exposure he got in the NHL early on is, I think, has hurt him. It's the expectations grew out of proportion to what he really is as a player. He's smart. He doesn't have. There's no dynamic part of his game. He's not a dynamic skater. Although he's playing faster this year, I think he's realizes that's a thing that he's got to do, is just all the time, 100% speed. So that's he's made progress there. But physically, he's not he's not able to impose himself in any way. He's just not that. He's not built that way. But I think if he can get a little. The puck can start going in for him a little bit, then maybe he can work his way up again. Although I don't know where he would fit at the NHL level at this point. I certainly don't see him as a top six, as a first or a second line center. There's no question about that.
Yeah,
is he gritty enough for the bottom six? I don't know. Probably not. So
yeah, I was gonna say, like, it feels like maybe the biggest thing blocking him is just that they clearly consider him a center, and I think rightly so. He's consistently been better in the middle than on the wing. Marco Sturm told us at the end of training camp, straight up, he was like, "I see him as a center." But you look at it, and it's like, well, obviously Elias Lindholm's going to be a center. Pavel Zacha has been better in the middle. Sturm likes him there. Fraser Minton has run with the third line center job, right? Like that might have been a place you circled and said, well, maybe if Fraser Minton struggles and needs a little more AHL seasoning at some point, like, do you just kind of do the switch, bring up Poitras, give him a shot there? Well, that hasn't happened because Fraser Minton's been good in the NHL. Obviously you have Corrali down on the fourth line, but then even when there's been an injury at center, they move Marat Husnadinov to the middle, and he played pretty well there. So he's just kind of, if they're going to keep him in the middle, which I do think is the right thing to do for his development, he's just kind of blocked right now. So somehow that log jam would have to shift. And maybe if the season goes south and the Pavel Zacha trade rumors come up again later in the year, like something would have to give at some point, it feels like.
Well, I agree with you about he's not a wing. To me, he's not a wing. Center's where he needs to be, in the middle of the ice where he can take advantage of, his IQ and his vision. That's going to happen less often on the walls. So, yeah, he is blocked at this point. But, I mean, somebody gets hurt up top and maybe he's the guy they plug in the middle, and maybe he can go from there. But, it's been, like I say, it's been a frustrating start for him here so far.
I mean, it's kind of like if you were in Boston right now, he would be playing that Hustadinov role, which is somebody that you can plug into the top six if you need to in a pinch. But if everybody's healthy, which, by the way, they're not right now, and you still see, but they are up the middle, which is, I guess, more important. So it's, there's just not a lot of there's not a lot of opportunity because you said it, Mark. Poitras not really, especially with the emergence of Minton. I mean, he's certainly not going to be a fourth line guy. And as much as in my opinion, Elias Lindholm leaves to be desired at 5-on-5 outside of the faceoff circle, his contract is what it is. It's not going anywhere, and he's a fixture. So
Yeah.
it's a reality, right? So I guess the question is, is Matt Poitras, is Fabian Lysell, are these guys, for whatever value they would have, are these guys that ultimately just may end up being trade chips? And this isn't me wishing them away from the system, but at some point, I just look at this practically. If you're not going to be in Boston for one reason or the other, and this, by the way, this is pre James Hagens era. This is pre, any of these other players that they have drafted or will draft and have bright futures. Like, again, what are we doing here? Are we just trying to cake Providence in the standings down in the A, or are we trying, like, that's the $1 million question for me, is if these players aren't going to get the opportunity or aren't going to stick it, then what's the organizational plan here, I guess, is my question. Right? Like, are we going to have Matt Poitras in Providence until he's 31? I don't think so. I think there's going to be some plan here, right? So, like, I guess that's what I'm looking forward to. What are they going to do here? Because right now, Mark, in Boston, it kind of seems like the perfect opportunity to at least be tinkering to see what guys can do. I mean, you've had the injury bug all year. The roster isn't super talented on paper up front, but at the same time, I also see that the guys that they haven't done anything to lose their spots. Like Tanner Jeannot, Mark Haslick, Fraser Minton has been a great line. I think, Sean Corrali has been fine in his role, but like, again, Fabian Lysell, Matt Poitras, they're not battling with Sean Corrali for a fourth line center role, right? And then the top six is what it is. I mean, we talked about Alex Steeves, 4 goals in his last 4 games in Boston, 5-12 since being called up, the intangibles he brings, and they're injured, but he's carving a role for himself. Okay, is Casey Middlestad? He's somebody we talked about in the offseason. Is he somebody that if he gets shipped out of Boston, now maybe the opportunity for Poitras, maybe. But again, I just think you have to, as Scott will frequently say, you kind of have to be tearing it up at the A to really get your call up, right? So I guess it's a wait and see period for these players, but it's a fascinating time for them.
Yeah, and it's we're only 2 months in. There's a long way to go. A lot of stuff could happen along the way. I gotta think. I don't think Lysell or Poitras are just buried in Providence for the duration. I think they'll get an opportunity at some point, whether they earn it outright or whether it comes up because somebody up top is playing poorly or is injured. I don't think, I think it's sort of a day by day or week by week process for the guys down in Providence that, hey, just be ready, because when you get the call, if and when you get the call, you got to be ready to jump on it, or else you're going to be back down before you know it. It's a tough situation to be in, but that's their lot in life right now. I mean, like I said, I don't believe for a second that they're going to spend the whole year down here and just kind of wither on the vine. So
I guess to follow up on, or maybe rephrase something that one of Brian's points there, which was, is the organization ready to move them, or are they hoping, or do they still have these 2 guys in their plans in the future? And it sounds like you're saying that you think organizationally they still value them and think that they do have a future, that they could help the NHL team. Is that fair to say?
I think that's definitely true in Poitras' case. I think in Lysell's case, I mean, I suppose that's true also. There's no indication they've given up on him. They still think he might be able to give them something. It hasn't happened yet, but I don't think they've given up. Having said that, I think if a viable trade came up Lysell, they would have made it already. I don't. Nobody's knocking on their door looking to trade for Fabian Lysell at this point. Every team has guys, kind of in that situation, a first rounder who maybe hasn't made the jump yet and might benefit from a change of scenery. And, that's all around the American Hockey League. There are guys like that playing on all the teams. I don't think it's an indication that their team has quit on them or doesn't believe in them. It's just where the situation stands at the moment.
I guess up the middle, Mark, and this is kind of, I guess, my overarching question is, you guys mentioned that Poitra's not a winger. I agree with you. But you look at Boston up the middle right now, and as currently constructed, I already mentioned Elias Lindholm. He's not really going anywhere right now. Pavel Zacha is a question mark. I like the player. I understand the debate around potentially moving him with his desirable contract at the deadline at the Bruins. I get all that. But currently speaking, you have Lindholm, you have Zacha, you have Fraser Minton. We know they've
recently. Middlestat was supposed to be center too.
Yeah, there you go. You have Casey Middlestat too. We know that, James Hagens is in the system. He's probably, a year or two away from being like a mainstay at the center ice position. He may play wing. My point is, something's going to have to give. Matt Poitras is not just going to outwork Pavel Zacha first. If Zacha's in Boston, he's at center. If Lindholm's in Boston, he's at center. Minton's at center. So he just kind of feels like an insurance policy right now.
Well,
and that's kind of where my questions are. It's like, where does he fit? Because they have so many guys under term and contract. And
I think, just to jump in here, like, my feeling, you're right, there's not a clear path, but I am also kind of a believer that if someone proves they're good enough to be an NHL center and can help your team, you figure out how to make it work. Like though NHL centers who help you win games are hard to come by. And if you have one who's 21, 22, 23 years old, you figure out how to make it work. Like, maybe you do bump Zacha back to the wing. So yeah, maybe Poitras has a little higher bar to clear because they didn't just clear the runway for him and give him, a free entry into an NHL center job. But ultimately, I think if Matt Poitras shows that he's going to be a good NHL center, they're going to find a way to have him playing center in the NHL.
Right. So you'd have to be moving at least two of Zacha, Middlestat, or Minton to wing in order to create that center. You're right, Scott. Let's see how it plays out. But it's going to take it's going to take a call up, right? And the Bruins seem reluctant to do it with him. And let's see what happens with the NHL roster. And as the season goes along, I'm just saying right now, it's definitely seems like an uphill battle for him. So,
yeah, I mean, he also turns 22 in March. So, like, I think to me, like, I'm a long ways from being like, Matt Poitras doesn't have a future in Boston. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I think I tend to have more patience on these things than a lot of fans.
He's a likable kid, and they bought his jersey and they want him to succeed. So, and I think that this kind of gets to what Mark was saying with, like, maybe the NHL stuff hurt him a little bit in that he made the NHL right away, and then it feels worse to have to go backwards and feel like I had a taste of it, and now, like, it's a confidence killer when you think you should be one place and you end up as another. Whereas, maybe the mindset would be different if he didn't have that time in the NHL. He would just see himself as, like, making progress rather than having that step back before having to make more progress and get back to it. So, obviously we get a lot of questions about Matt Poitras just because he's a likable kind of fan favorite, just for his personality and the flashes that he showed when he was here. And I guess, Brian, this is your guy, Kuznetsov. Like, we see what Kuznetsov's able to do when he's with Pastrnak. Like, Matt Poitras was kind of in the similar boat when he was with Pastrnak. It looked good, right? Like, sometimes players benefit from their circumstances. And so a few questions we've gotten in our mailbags over the last year have been related to, well, why don't you just give him a chance with Pastrnak? But that's not the most realistic thing, I guess. But we saw it happen with Kuznetsov. So, but it's not like they're trying to get Poitras. They're not going out of their way to try to make Poitras be an NHLer by throwing him on the first line. Like, that's just not how that works.
And just to be clear, this is not me giving up on Poitras or saying I don't want him to get a chance. This is me questioning it based on their current circumstances, because Scott, he is young, but he's also the same age as Fraser Minten, who has carved out the role for himself. We know they've drafted James Hagens. We know other guys are under maybe Minten goes to the wing, but I have to go off what we're seeing right now, right? So like, this is why I'm posing the question.
Fraser Minten is a different player too. Like, Fraser Minten is not the same kind of skill set, size, role that Poitras would be playing. I think they're very different players. I know they're fighting for the same spot, but they're completely different. And
but which one gets NHL time though? Which style gets
the bigger
NHL
one.
time?
The guy who played a more NHL ready game that they were looking for, and saw a role and ran with it. Like, at the start of camp, I probably would have put the odds on Minten, Poitras, like, who has a better chance to be on the NHL team to start the year. Probably would have been fairly even. Minten had a better camp and took advantage of the opportunity. Like, we talked about it. Poitras did not have the best training camp in preseason. And like, okay, that's tough. It's a short sample size. He's had really good camps in the past, but this was a camp with a new coach. And I think it would be fair to say Matt Poitras didn't fully take advantage of that. And now, is also not exactly tearing it up in Providence. Like, that there is an element of, again, like, you need to break down the door. Like, you can't just politely knock on it. You got to kick it down.
And that's the only point I'm making, is it's going to be it right now as it stands at 22 years old, albeit there's some things standing in the way. The emergence of Minten, the contract to Lindholm, the combination of Zacha Mittelstadt, the drafting of Hagens, like, and again, maybe Pavel Zacha gets traded and that makes it easier. I'll tell you guys right now, pound for pound, like, I think I might want Zacha, in his prime than over Poitras. But again, like, there's ways for it to happen. I'm just saying it's gonna be a challenge for him, and that's it. I'm not predicting he doesn't. I'm just saying he's got his work cut out for him, and there's nothing wrong with that. Prove yourself. It's all good.
Yeah, Mark, do you have any other thoughts on any of those forwards that we've been talking about? Because I do want to ask you about what defenseman you think should come up next. But finish your thoughts on the offensive guys.
Locmelis has had a good start. He's on track for maybe a 40-point season, that's a damn good rookie year in the American League. He's played wing at times. He's played center at times. He's a smart player, not a guy that's going to run people over on the wall, but a smart player who makes a lot of winning plays. So I think he's right where he needs to be at this point, doing what he needs to do. He's a smart player. He's in a good spot. Some of the other guys, who else? Riley Duran only has the one goal, but man, he's playing an up and down game that's been really good. But the offensive part is lacking. There's no question about that. He needs to shoot it more. He could be a bottom six forward, penalty killer type guy. He could help them in that role. Who else?
He's got a good shot too, Duran. When he gets
he
it
does.
off.
He needs to use it. Use it.
Yeah. He's a guy that you look at and say, because we've been talking a lot about top 9 spots in Boston. If we wanted to recalibrate it to a fourth line role and the type of player who can get an opportunity in a fourth line role in the NHL, the north and south game he plays, Mark, and if he improves at what you're talking about, that's his ticket. PK, I don't know if the spot's there right now in Boston, but obviously injuries can happen and stuff. But I liked his effort a lot in preseason. He played a lot with Jeffrey Viel. Obviously, we know what happened with him out of camp. So Riley Duran is a player that he's very easy to root for with the effort he brings forward.
Yeah, I think he could go up right now, and in a pinch, they needed a fourth line guy, a penalty killer. He could go up and do that job for for a short window, and I don't think it would hurt the team at all. But he still needs to round out the offensive part, and whether he can actually do that will kind of tell the tale of his where he lands in the future.
And you brought up Locmelis. Where do you think he is in the depth chart of call-ups? Like, is he somebody you think is on the radar? Or is he somebody you think that they want to give, say, a majority of the season, if not the whole season, in the AHL to continue to develop? Or is he somebody that maybe he comes in over a Lysell or a Poitras because of the way he's been playing?
I don't know. I think that he a whole season in the A would is what he needs. I could see him coming up for a game, maybe 2 games if they needed him. I think he could do that, but he's not built for the bottom 6. Really, he's not a big kid. He's more physical, I think, when you watch him for an extended period. He's more physical than maybe you thought after watching him like at UMass. But he's a bottom 6 guy with good hands and a good head. I'm curious to see where he stands at near the end of this season. See if has he taken a step? Has he made a jump? But I'd expect to see him in the American League, for the rest of the year, barring some kind of situation where they needed a guy like him up top.
Now he is a guy that versatility helps, right? Because he can play wing and center.
Yeah, I don't know. Is he big enough to be a center in the NHL? I don't know. That's especially in the bottom 6, which tends to have guys that are 6'3", 6'4", playing center down there, or up there, I should say. So I don't know. Wing, center, it's kind of a tough call there as to which is a better fit for him.
All right, Mark, we do have to get to defense because that is the most pressing issue for the Boston Bruins right now. So we don't necessarily need to do predictions because by the time this drops, we might know who the call-up is, but you figure it's got to be one from the group of Frederic Brunet, Victor Soderstrom, Billy Sweezey. Correct me if I'm wrong. If you think someone else maybe jumps those guys, but anyone from that group stand out to you? What do you kind of think of those guys?
Well, I don't think Soderstrom is the guy. He's too heavily tilted to the offensive side, and I don't think that's what you're replacing Mike Callahan here, right? That's how I'm thinking of it. You need a replacement for Mike Callahan, not a replacement for Charlie McAvoy. It's Callie that's going to be replaced, and the closest. The guy that fits that mold the most down here would be Sweezey. He's a defensive guy, physical, willing to fight at a moment's notice, but not bringing much to the table offensively. That's just not his game. He's a shutdown guy in the American League. Brunet has made a nice step this year. He's a two-way player, not overly he's a good offensive player, but not great. And he's a good defensive player, not great. So he's kind of in the middle. I don't think Brunet's ready to be a full-time NHL player, but in the short term, maybe he's the guy. Maybe he's the guy they take a look at and see, with their own eyes exactly where he stands against NHL competition. I think they know what Sweezey is. He's been up before, and he does what he does, right? He makes a good first pass. He defends the front of the net, and he'll be physical. They know that. How Brunet's game translates at the NHL level is still to be determined. He got a couple of games last year, but you couldn't really tell anything off that. So I would say it's between Sweezey and Brunet, depending on what they want. There's other guys down here under NHL contracts, Jackson Edward, Loki Johansson, but those guys they should probably both be in the East Coast League at this point. So they're not an option. The guy they just brought in on a PTO, Christian Wolanin, he can't go up because he's not on an NHL contract, but and he's looked rusty in the first few games here in Providence, but I don't know if he would be the guy. Probably not, because he's more of an offensive guy. He describes himself as a facilitator. He's not a shutdown guy. He's not a particularly strong defender, and he's not an option at this point. So I think it's Sweezey or Brunet.
Yeah, I wanted
Bridget,
to,
sorry, before you jump in, I was just gonna say I do think there's a telling comment from Marco Sturm after Tuesday's game where he was asked about, I think it was Kevin Paul Dupont asked him about defensemen contributing offensively, and Sturm just like vigorously shook his head and was like, he was like, not right now, like not what we're focused on right now. We need to defend first. He was like, maybe when everyone's healthy, yes, we can think about defensemen initiating more offense, but he was like, right now with all the injuries, we just need to defend. So that I think feeds even more into like probably Sweezey. Like that probably makes the most sense here.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, it's unbelievable that whoever they call up would be the 10th guy on defense for them. It's crazy. It's mind-boggling. And I mean, they haven't even told us what Charlie McAvoy's injury specifically is, right? Obviously, it's a facial injury. Is it a broken jaw? Is it something else? They haven't specified what that injury is. Not that I'm getting off topic here. That has nothing to do with who they call up, but it's just a question I wonder about, like, what the heck was the injury? I know it was bad, but what was it?
Yeah, I think there was some sort of fracture to the jaw. I'm fairly confident in that, but I don't know how severe. I don't know if there were other injuries on top of it. But yeah, it is interesting though, because Sturm. So we've at least seen McAvoy on the ice. Like he skated before their morning skate on Saturday at the Garden, but yet on Tuesday, Sturm said Pasternak is probably the one who's closest to returning, and we know. And he also said he's not skating the rest of the week. So I guess McAvoy seems like, okay, he's skating a little, but still certainly not back this week. And, maybe not next week. So that's see what happens there.
And when he comes back, he's going to have to wear full facial protection for who knows, for the rest of the season. I don't know. But how's that going to affect his game? Guys that aren't used to that matters. That's a factor, and it can be a negative. It's never a positive, right? It's never a positive. If it's going to affect him, it'll be negatively, but it's something obviously he's going to have to.
Except Mark, one notable exception here. I remember Chris Kelly with a full cage was a legend. It gave him superpowers.
Good point. But not everyone is Chris Kelly.
Yeah.
Let's face it.
But he is there to talk people through it. He is on the bench. So I guess two-parter for the to talk about the defense is, were you surprised that Aspero got called up ahead of any of these guys? Or did you say, oh, this is a guy that's
Listen,
he's going to be a fit? Are you surprised at all with what he's done in the NHL and the run he's had? Because he's been good.
I'm shocked at what he's done, and you can confirm this with Evan Marinowski. My take at the start of the season was, if you see this guy Aspero, to me, is the canary in the coal mine. If you see him in the NHL, that means they're tanking for Gavin McKenna. Okay, that was my hot take at the beginning of the season, and wrong again, Divver, wrong again. He's done everything that they hoped for. Not playing within himself, not trying to be something that he's not capable of being. I mean, he's been a revelation. Let's face it. And now they need another guy to step in and do that. So.
Yeah,
I take the L. I take the L on Aspero.
We all have to do that. We have to do that sometimes. We've all been wrong before. Not Scott. Scott's never been wrong, but
but it was weird, like watching Aspero through camp, because like I knew nothing about him beforehand. You look him up on Elite Prospects, like, oh, he's been in Belleville for however many years, and I'm like, all right, that's just AHL depth. And then he kind of just like kept sneaky having good days and kind of stacking it together, and he's hanging around, and he makes it through this round of cuts, and he ends up being the very last cut on defense. So like, but by that point I was like, oh, okay, he's probably one of the first call-ups, because clearly they saw something they like for him to have lasted that long in camp. But yeah, really, certainly for me too, like, came out of nowhere and was a guy that I just didn't know anything about. And then you're like, I don't know, he's physical, he seems to skate well, like maybe there is something there.
6 years with Calgary and Ottawa, not good teams. And he didn't get a sniff, not even one game in the NHL. So that's kind of what I was going by, that this guy, there's nothing about his game that jumps out at you. And these two organizations that really don't have a lot going for them right now, although Ottawa, they're decent now, but in the years Aspero was there, they weren't good, and they never even looked at him. So that's just goes to show you, a new situation, new surroundings. Sometimes guys can step up.
Well, I'm sure that's fueled his fire, and it's what's led to him not wanting to relinquish this opportunity. And I knew nothing about Aspero heading into camp, and then at Warrior, I did find myself watching him and saying, who's this guy that's closing off plays, and he was competing really hard. And
we would be remiss to not mention he scored his first NHL goal.
Well, he did, and
on an absolute softie by John Gibson, which, by the way, like makes the loss even more frustrating, because like John Gibson was not good in that game, and he has not been good all year. The one he gives up to Steeves at the end is like, what? I don't even know what he was trying to do there. And you're just like, man, if Swayman was just a little better, or the defense was a little better, that was such a winnable game, facing that Detroit defense and facing Gibson, but alas.
Yeah. But yeah, no. So Aspero's just been a good story. We didn't really talk about him on this podcast about like players to make the team, because for the reasons you mentioned, Mark, it's like, he's mid-20s AHLer, and despite looking competitive in camp, you just didn't expect it. But he is, from the jump since he's been in Boston, and these guys could tell you, like, I've loved his game, and he brings an element of uniqueness to the blue line that is present. Like, he doesn't play like McAvoy, doesn't play like Lindholm or Zadorov or Lohrei, or like he has a very, like, you can look at him and say he challenges guys, he angles them well, he's thick, he's stocky, he skates alongside people, and he's physical. Like, and you're right, he seems to be playing true to himself. So I don't know what his long-term future is in Boston, but I'm hoping that he has definitely earned himself a long-term future in the NHL with Boston or anybody else, because I think he's again a story to root for.
Yeah, it's been it speaks well of the Bruins pro scouting department that they identified him as a guy who maybe could help. a guy like Steeves, well, he's an all-star in the American League. There's no secret, to pick him out of the AHL and say, yeah, maybe this guy can do it. But Aspero's a different story.
Yeah.
Bridget, you had a two-parter?
Yeah, we had talked about how even so he comes in when Lohrei's getting scratched, right? And he comes in and he's playing well, and he's one of the reasons why Lohrei didn't get back in the lineup so quickly is because he grabbed a spot and he held on to it and he didn't do anything bad enough to get pulled out of the lineup, really. And we had talked about it at the time, and to the point where when Lohrei did come back, we thought maybe keep Aspero in over Jokiharju because Jokiharju makes some mistakes, and so just in terms of depth, I feel like he even jumped maybe a seventh D or even Jokiharju in the way that he's played so far. I guess that's more of a comment than it was a question, but but I also wanted to say one thing about Frederic Brunet is he's somebody that out of camp, we were talking about his offensive ability, and you said that you don't think his offensive ability is maybe what it could be or what it needs to be to come into the NHL. But if he is coming in for Jokiharju, who's the most recent player on defense to get hurt, Jokiharju did have that offensive aspect to his game. And if you were trying to replace that, maybe Brunet would be the option, but it does seem like they're hesitant to go to him.
Well, I think his offensive game kind of ends at the offensive blue line, somewhat like Matt Grzelcyk. He can carry the puck. He can get the puck out of the defensive zone. He can get it through the neutral zone. But when he hits the offensive zone, well, that's where it kind of ends for him. He's not dangling anybody. He's not making a backdoor pass that makes you go, wow, that was a great play. He's just kind of vanilla in the offensive zone. Once he gets the puck up, advances it up ice and into the offensive zone. So I don't know how much upside there is in his offensive game. Maybe there's something there that I haven't seen yet, but that's where that's what I see in him. I don't see a guy. He put up a lot of points in the Quebec League, and I don't think that counts for a whole lot. But I think maybe his numbers there, you could look at them and think that, oh, this guy, he's really an offensive D, and he's really not. He's a two-way guy. You can get the puck out of your end and advance it, transport it, but once he gets to the offensive zone, that's kind of where his game, where it ends for him offensively.
Well, Mark, you also didn't anticipate Jonathan Aspero being a Norris candidate, so I guess we're gonna.
That's true. That's true.
No, I'm just kidding. One other comment on Billy Sweezey I didn't mention is that he's one of the few right shots organizationally that the Bruins really have, especially with already down Jokiharju and McAvoy. Truly, McAvoy and Jokiharju were two of your three NHL caliber, right shot. I mean, they're both down, so maybe that's an element too.
Yeah. And that is legitimately something to monitor because the Bruins have now tried several guys on their offsides, and I'd say with mixed results. Aspero's probably done it the most, but he's also taken some penalties over there on the right side where you could kind of tell he had his stick in the wrong spot. They've tried Lohrei on the right side. I think he's maybe handled it fairly well for the most part. They even tried Zadorov on the right at one point, so they are, we always think of it as you can flip a guy and it's probably not an issue. And with enough time, it probably shouldn't be. But, they could definitely just want someone who is a natural right shot, right side defenseman. That they could use that right now for sure. Mark, the last thing I wanted to ask about, maybe, I don't know if these guys have any final questions, but the goalies, because Providence has two of them that are playing really well right now, and Michael DiPietro and Simon Zajicek. Is that, I don't know if you know the correct pronunciation.
I just call him Simon.
Okay, perfect. But so
it's
both are playing.
Simone.
Yeah,
Simone.
both are playing really well statistically. Like 2 of the 4 or 5 best goalies in the whole AHL. Up in Boston, it's been a bit inconsistent for Jonas Korpisalo as the backup, and obviously we know the contract, and that's not going to be an easy one to move. I will say Korpisalo made some big saves Tuesday, coming in relief of Swayman, like to even give the Bruins a shot to have a miracle comeback. But what are your thoughts on the goalies down there? Like, are either of those guys ready to be an NHL backup if, say, the Bruins were to move on from Korpisalo at some point this year?
Well, I think it's too soon for Simone because he just got here from Europe, but he's been very, very good. And, the goaltending overall has been extraordinary. It's the reason why they're 16-4. But the guy that's closest, and you can make a case that he's earned a shot is Mikey DiPietro. The thing though, people, as Brandon Bussey continues to pile up wins, people point to that and say, see, they blew that. They should have signed him. They should have done this. They should have done that. When the fact is, Bussey was the number 4 goalie in the organization at the end of last year. He was outplayed all year by DiPietro, and it was time for him to go someplace else and give it a shot, and that's what he did. Now, with DiPietro, the thing with him is that he has just a handful of NHL games. So unless you're willing to bury Korpisalo in the American League and just eat the money, which they certainly could do, DiPietro is unproven at the NHL level. And if Swayman were to go down with an injury, then where are you then? You've got Korpisalo, who's got a lot of games in the NHL, and you've got DiPietro, who has hardly any. So you're kind of in a tough spot if you take that route. So I don't know, but I think DiPietro could. I would like to see him get some games up top and see what it looks like. In that year when the Bruins won, 70 out of 80 games or whatever it was, I feel like there were opportunities to take a look at Brandon Bussey, and they never did. They never did. I don't know why. Was that they didn't need to, or they just wanted to chase as many wins as they could that year, and it didn't matter?
Going for the record.
Yeah, but I mean, if they had given him some games, when you're as far ahead in the standings as they were that year, you certainly could afford to. They didn't. So nobody knew what Brandon Bussey looked like in the NHL until now when he's with another team. So
and
I don't know. It's kind of a tough spot to be in, I would say.
Well, that season, I get what you mean, because there were injuries that season, and Swayman was down for a little bit. Allmark was down for a little bit. But this season, both goalies have been healthy. So there's really no opportunity, it seems like, unless somebody gets hurt. Because I personally don't think Korpisalo is a bad backup, and I don't think they want to get rid of him and lose that part of their depth at the position. And so that would mean somebody would have to get hurt for him to get called up. I think that's the only way we see him this year, unless, like Scott said, at the trade deadline, they decide to either get rid of his contract or someone else wants a goalie for whatever reason, and that's
or needs a goalie.
That's who they get. Yeah. So those are the only two circumstances I see him, because I don't think they're just gonna. Well, I don't think they're gonna just have 3 goalies. Like, clearly they need more depth at their other positions with all the injuries, and it just doesn't seem like there's a natural spot for him to come up unless Korpisalo or Swayman is dealing with an injury. Whether or not that's short, hopefully you hope it's just a short-term injury. Maybe he gets some time in if Swayman misses, 3 games or something, and they want to give DiPietro a game. But I did have one last question, just because
I was just going to say, from my perspective, if I think there is, beyond just has DiPietro earned it or not, I do think there could be a situation this season where, say, Korpisalo doesn't pick it up because, again, I think he's had some pretty rough starts recently. Like, you need every point. You can't just afford to throw away the games that Swayman's not starting. Like, I do wonder if there's a hockey decision at some point of, hey, we think DiPietro might just be a better goalie than Korpisalo. Like that, I wonder if that's we're not there yet, but I wonder if like that would arise at some point this year. Obviously, that they hope Korpisalo just plays better and they don't have to worry about it.
And my final question is just because you don't just cover the Providence Bruins, I also see you at rinks around college hockey and you cover prospects that are in the Bruins system. What have been any takeaways that you've gotten from watching some of the Bruins prospects that aren't in Providence in their journeys to the pros?
Well, I've been impressed with James Hagens lately. I think he's picked up his game. And I think it's just in time for the World Juniors. You know, he had just a dominating performance last year on that stage, and I fear that anything less than that this year will have, the prospect truthers pointing at him and saying, "See, he's not as good as whatever." But it's encouraging to see how his game has picked up. But the guy that's really encouraging is Dean Letourneau. Obviously, he's I don't think college hockey has a comeback player of the year or most improved. It wouldn't be a comeback for in his case, but most improved player. I mean, who better than him? He looks like a first round draft pick now, or certainly more than he did last year. So that's been encouraging. Less encouraging is Oscar Jelvik's situation. He's missed the second half of last year, or the post-Bean part of last year, and came back briefly this year, and now he's out again. You know, he's a guy who I would have thought a couple of years ago, especially after his sophomore year, that he would be a lock to be signed by the Bruins. And now, I don't know. He really hasn't been able to be healthy. So that's discouraging. Gasso, the lights here. Gasso is hurt, but I think he'll be back, and I think he'll sign at the end of this season, and we'll see what he does in Providence. As far as the other guys, the kid in Youngstown is
Cooper Simpson.
Cooper Simpson is lighting it up there, which is it's looking like a very smart pick at this point. Who else prospect wise?
Will Zellers is off to a good start in North Dakota, but notably got left off the U.S. World Junior Camp list.
I was talking to somebody about this, a college hockey guy about this yesterday, and I would have taken Will Zellers over L.J. Mooney, who actually made the team. But then it was pointed out to me that, well, wait a minute. Bob Motzko, the Minnesota coach, he's coaching the World Juniors. L.J. Mooney plays for Minnesota. The tournament is in Minnesota. And then it kind of became clear, okay, I get it now. I get it.
Mm-hmm.
They could have picked Zellers, but no, they went with the Minnesota guy. So I'm not going to tell you Zellers got screwed, because I think there's a lot of really good players in competition to make that team, but I would have picked them.
Yeah, and there's still a few cuts for them to make. So we'll see if a guy like Mooney ends up making it. Yeah, he's an interesting player because like Mooney is like really skilled, but what 5'6"? I mean, he is tiny. So like how that plays in a tournament like this is always going to be a question.
Yeah, I mean, Will Zellers is maybe that's a new nickname for him. Willers is playing with some good confidence and swag at North Dakota right now. I think he should have, obviously a friend of the podcast, so maybe a little bit biased. They're Bruins prospect,
he
but
came on in the off season. I was telling Mark he came on in the off season to talk to us.
He's such a good kid, to talk to. He's got a personality that kind of is a lot more outgoing, and effervescent, if that's the word, than your typical hockey player who talks about getting pucks deep and grinding it out and all that. He's going to
Play our
be,
game.
if and when he does make it, he's going to be a good guy to have around in the locker room.
Yeah, we had Scott, is it Chris Peters with Flow Hockey?
Yeah. Mhm.
He likened Zellers to, I'm blanking on the player's name in Carolina's last name, Blake, maybe.
Blake, Jackson Blake.
Blake, yeah.
He kind of comped him to him, like best case scenario in the NHL, said maybe a third liner. I don't know. I think Zellers has maybe a little bit more upside than that, but obviously it's still a couple of years away.
Jamie Langenbrunner of the Bruins told me last spring that he brought up Jackson Blake, and he said that Zellers studies Blake's shifts when he can, because that's somebody he sees himself as maybe a comparable player. And plus, it's someone he watched in high school hockey in Minnesota as well. So there's
and Blake went North Dakota too, right? He went that route?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So there's a lot of similarities there for sure.
And by the way,
if Zellers can get to the NHL as quickly as Blake did, well, I think he only did 2 years at North Dakota and went straight into the NHL with very little time in the minors. If Zellers can duplicate that, then the Bruins will be very happy.
Yeah, and by the way, Blake may very well be on his way to being a top 6 forward. He's got 15 points in 25 games for Carolina this season, playing over 16 minutes a night. So like that's, at 22 years old, it seems like he is very much still on the rise. So
yeah,
he did not have the third line ceiling, and Zellers may very well have a higher ceiling than that too.
Yeah, I mean, my skepticism wasn't so much on the Blake comparison; it was more so when he said maybe third line at most. And to your point, Scott, I mean, I could see Zellers being in his early mid-20s and playing alongside a James Hagens. You just never know, right? But anyway, Mark, we appreciate your time very much. Hopefully, we can come on again soon and inform us on everything Providence. Our listeners certainly appreciate it because we aren't able to watch them on a gamely basis. Where can everybody find your writing and your coverage?
Well, I do a weekly wrap up on the P Bruins after every weekend. That's at ringsiderhodeisland.com. That's pretty much my I do a little bit on NHL.com on college kids. That's about the extent of my writing these days. Follow
Mark
on Twitter. Yeah, if you follow me on Twitter, you'll be able to find it. Whatever little work I actually do will be there.
Yeah, at Mark Divver, legitimately a must follow for everything. Providence Bruins, college hockey, even prep news. You get everything.
Yeah, I mean, I could take Mark's time for another hour and a half here if we wanted to go into New England prep hockey and all that stuff. But
Mark did tell us he has all day, so
That's true. Bridget, do you have anything else before we go?
No, I'm good.
Scott,
Thank you
Scott,
so much.
Yeah, all good.
All right. Thank you,
Thanks
Mark.
a lot,
We
Mark.
appreciate it.
Thanks, guys. Happy holidays.
Yeah, same to you.
And to our listeners, enjoy Bruins Blues on Thursday, and we'll be back on Friday to talk to you next episode. Hey, guys, thanks for watching the Skate Podcast. If you want to see more of our videos, visit our playlist.
Not in front of a screen? You can listen to us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Don't forget to follow us on social media. And if you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to give us a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel, and leave a comment.